Do you find that in your work that there are differences or different opportunities that we might be thinking about?
So I like to focus on what's possible. So I apologize if anything I say is incorrect for your region or for your work, but this is coming definitely from the perspective of us at the Youth Justice Coalition and other groups I work with. And I really want to also uplift the people in the room that are part of that work. Jody Kent's here from the National Campaign for Fair Sentencing for Youth, and Fernando Martinez is there from the Dignity in Schools campaign, and also Tammy Liu from the Stratton Center, part of Dignity in Schools in LA. Please support the work. I think, first off, for anybody that came up from the 80s on, we have not witnessed movement for the most part in this nation. We've witnessed it outside the nation, and we've come in contact, and we were lucky with elders who witnessed movement firsthand here. But we came up with AIDS, HIV, crack, Reaganomics, and disinvestment of everything we care about, and mass incarceration, mass criminalization of young people, especially young people of color, all hitting us at the same time. And so I think that the comments I'm making really come from that viewpoint. One, we don't have a movement building vision or structure or infrastructure or even desire for most of our work. And I don't say that to be critical or not to say that the work is amazing and brilliant in many ways. But first, we've come up under the weight of the nonprofit, what many say nonprofit industrial complex, which means that it's hard for us not to put our individual and organizational identities above all else. And it's very hard for us to build a movement building identity. So when you go to other parts of the world, you never see people argue about what size font their name's going to be at the bottom of the flyer, or who's going to get credit for a campaign, or how the story is told. And that's the struggle that most of us in this country are constantly in. And I think that funders play a key role in promoting that, and supporting it, and funding that, and that's something you guys could change overnight. Secondly, because of that, we didn't come up with a movement building infrastructure in terms of how you do the work. So if you look at any successful movement in the history of the world that I've seen anyway, again, we have not witnessed them firsthand, it's more like witnessing from afar or reading about them, it's because there was a mass base that everybody was accountable to, or at least if you weren't accountable to it, people were telling you, you better be accountable to this mass base. And now we have litigators and advocates and researchers who do, again, incredible work, but get the vast majority of the resources. And those people that are directly building a base on the ground are doing it with crumbs, and are doing it totally disconnected from the researchers and the advocates and the litigators. The researchers, the advocates, and the litigators are not connected to or accountable to a mass base. So oftentimes those two forces that should be in concert with each other are working against each other and are feeling threatened by the fact that negotiation is happening without the ground and that the people most impacted are almost never at the table. And if we don't address that in this nation, we will not see the victories that are possible for us, even in the midst of amazing movement building history happening all around us. Movements don't happen because they're planned, but they do happen when you have the infrastructure in place to take advantage of them. And right now, we don't have the relationships with the infrastructure in place to take advantage of them. And lastly, I would say, like overnight, like starting right now, we can erase all kind of language that permanently disempowers and criminalizes many of us. So even in our own work, even in the organizations that are allies, we use the term illegal immigrants regularly. We use the term ex-offender and offender, and juvenile, and delinquent, and minor. And we throw people under the bus when we say that young people are somehow more able to change than adults. And so what happens to all the 18 and ups that are also fed into the criminal justice system in massive numbers, that somehow they're not able to change even though the data suggests so much otherwise. So I'd say more than anything, if we could erase the language that divides us, and start, I would say like one thing we could do is to start with a beauty tax. If you're more beautiful in the eyes of funders and donors and media, if you have a PhD, if you're white, if you're educated, if you've never been incarcerated, then put aside 15% of everything you raise and give that back to the grassroots and create a grassroots fund so the people on the bottom can get fed like we fed movements